I wish we could feel a little bit of that warmth right now. It's hard to teach on hell when it's like 5 degrees out there with the wind chill factor. Anyway, we looked at some verses last week, looking at the geographical location located underneath your feet. But there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things in the Bible that I don't think anybody's really figured out of how it's designed. Because when you think of hell, you think of a place of fire where somebody's just sitting there, being tormented. And it may not be that way at all. Well, they're being tormented, but there may not be sitting there. Look at Isaiah chapter 14. We'll look at another dimension of this. Now, remember we talked about hell could refer to the lake of fire, and it could also refer to what we're going to look at here now as the pit. Now, they're two separate things for sure. In fact, the lake of fire is something that's going to take place in the future, and we will discuss all that later on. But we're going to look at what the Bible says about this pit. In Isaiah 14:12, it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" And this is where you have Lucifer falling. And he says these 5 I wills in his heart against God. He said, For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne. Notice he has a throne above the stars of God. There's your angels. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. In other words, he wasn't satisfied with his throne. He wants to sit at the right hand of the Father. See, you can't be greater than God. God's as, but he said, look what he says here. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will be like the Most High. He wanted to be equal with God. The funny thing is that he makes us his equal. I mean, all you got to do is ask. Just don't tell him you're going to be his equal. And when I mean equal, I mean son, daughter, family. Now, those are your equals. You don't let people barge into your house that are strangers, but your kids barge in all the time. You may not want them to, but they do anyway. He says, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. So he defines this hell as a pit. It says, they that see thee narrowly shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners? So when we talk about Abraham's bosom, remember we talked about that being a prison? And the devil really had the keys to the prison house. Now, they weren't being tormented down there. They were in a place where they were comforted. I don't know how that is. I just know that somehow God arranged that, constructed that, built that, prepared that, just like he prepared the other side of this thing to be torment and flames. But he said, thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Now, look at Revelation chapter 20. And we find the fulfillment of this still in the future, but it's going to happen. Revelation 20, look at verse 1 to 3. And I saw an angel come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit. Now, could this be the angel of the Lord? Could be. Jesus Christ definitely was able to get the keys of death and hell. And he is about to open it up and put something in it. And it says, having the key of the bottomless pit, a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him. I like that, he shut him up. That'll be nice. Somebody thinks the devil's sitting on their shoulder, talking in their ear, or probably, there's a lot of truth to that in the sense that there's spiritual things that are always working on you. whether it's good or evil, it's there. There's no doubt about it. It says, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. After that, he must be loosed a little season. So he's going to be chained and sealed in this pit for 1,000 years. And it refers to it as a bottomless pit, which immediately draws criticism about the Bible. Look at Revelation chapter 9. We find there's another time it's opened. In fact, this is earlier than Revelation 20. But in the tribulation, this thing's going to be opened up. In Revelation 9, verse 1 to 3, it says, and the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Lord's passing around this key, isn't he? He goes, here, I got the key. Go ahead and take it. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit. Interesting. As the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the moon and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. In other words, there's enough smoke coming out of this pit, it literally darkens the atmosphere of our earth to where the sun can't shine through like it normally does. Darkens it. Yeah, you know, the Lord just destroys anything we need to clean up the atmosphere. We need to clean up the water. We need to clean this, clean that. That's true. We need to manage it. Okay? But you know what the Lord does? He just destroys it. Because man put more emphasis on that than they did God. And that won't work. You know, I'll tell you what, if you'll put God first, God will give you the technology to clean your water. He'll give you the technology to clean your air. In a lot of ways, he has done that. At least it'll be good enough to when he gets here, he doesn't have to completely overhaul it. Now he's got to overhaul everything. I mean, he's going to get the water, turn it to blood. He's going to turn the skies dark with smoke. Polluter. God's just a polluter. I don't know what to tell you. But it's his planet, you know. Clean burn. It says there came out of the smoke locusts. If it ain't bad enough, man, something comes out of that thing that's wicked and terrifying. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. And that is the power to sting you. And we talked about that when we're going through Revelation, so I'm not going to talk about that here. But you got two places where this thing's opened up. One in the sometime during the trib, and then one at the end of the tribulation. And this is just the prelim. It's the he's cast into the pit for 1,000 years. That just gives him a taste of hell, because ultimately he winds up in the lake of fire. Now there's 7 physical properties, or at least 7 physical, probably more than that are mentioned about hell. Matthew 16:18, go ahead and turn there. And I don't know how these things are. I just believe the Bible, believe that they are. In Matthew 16:18, Jesus said, I say also unto you that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So hell must have gates. You say, well, what do they look like? Are they iron bars? I don't know. I mean, you know, God can make a gate out of rock. You know, for one thing, if it's down below our feet, you know what they say about the core of the earth? It's iron. So don't tell me there's not plenty of iron bar or iron ore down there. I mean, there's plenty for the Lord to work with, but he says there's a gate. And there's a key goes in the gate that opens the thing up. Now, is it a spiritual, supernatural key? I don't know. Maybe it is. But all I know is there's a gate down there. You can't get through the gate when it's shut. You got to have somebody open that gate. Look in Jonah chapter 2. Jonah chapter 2. Now this you have to understand, that Jonah did not survive the whale. Contrary to what every other Christian on earth believes. Jonah did not survive the whale. He died in the whale. He was dead for 3 days, and then the Lord rose him from the dead, which is still a greater miracle than surviving the whale for 3 days. Would you agree? Okay. In verse 2 it says, and said, and this is where the whale's got him. He's gone down to the bottom of the ocean there. And said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I. Now this is different than him crying out of the belly of the whale. He's crying out of the belly of hell. He is one of two that visits hell and then gets back out. Jesus Christ being the other. And thou heardest my voice. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet thou hast brought up my life from corruption, brought him up from the dead. So that's how you know he died, because he never would have used the word corruption. When we talk about this corruptible, those that are dead must put on incorruption. This mortal, those that are living, must put on immortality. But he said these bars were about him. You say, well, are they? I guess they're bars. Some stalactites, I don't know. Whatever they were, they surrounded him, and he was trapped inside. And if the Lord hadn't gotten him out, poor Jonah, he'd still be there, because he couldn't get out on his own. Now, there's not only that, but look at Luke 16. And I did want to make a note about the gates of hell. You know, usually when you think of gates, you think of there's two big gates joined together, the gates. But it could be there's more than one opening. I would guess somewhere around the Bermuda Triangle there's an opening. I kind of believe that. I believe those, we'll talk about this a little bit, those smokers that are down there, those vents that they found. They go down, if you go down about 3 miles, maybe a little bit further than that. I think the Mariana Trench is 7 miles deep, but you go down about 3 or 4 miles deep, and they found these smokers, and what they were was vents in the earth, and the blackest, vilest stuff was coming out of those vents. Sulfur, but it's so thick, I mean, it would darken the water around it. And you could see fire, or at least molten rock underneath these things spilling out. And a lot of times there were these big chimneys that it produced. Now, I saw the film. I mean, you can look online. I mean, it's not, I don't know what that was, but it's inside there. I don't know if it was CGI. I mean, it wasn't CGI. It wasn't anything like that. It was, something falling? Okay. It was, I don't think it was Jacques Cousteau, although I think he went down there one time. He would never go back down. Nobody asked him why. But when I saw that thing, and that's probably been 20 years ago, when I saw that footage, they had to use a submersible because down so far, you know, you wouldn't want to take the chance going down that far. They went down there, and I saw that thing, and I thought, man, the Bible's right on the money. You know, stuff was coming out of there. You know what the Bible says about hell? Hell hath enlarged herself. Even a volcano spewing, you know, this stuff's coming out of there, it's producing mountains underneath the sea. Anyway, in Luke 16, verse 26, there's something else that shows up. This is where Abraham's explaining to the rich man that he can't send Lazarus with a drop of water because there's a gulf between them. That gulf is an unbridgeable gap. It's an unbridgeable gap. It says that beside all this, between us and you, there's a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from thence. So somehow, this thing's a pit, but somehow there's an area that is separate from what's happening in this pit, and there's a gulf where you can't pass from one to the other, yet you're close enough to hear a conversation. because it's Abraham's having a conversation with the rich man who is in hell. Now, I don't understand that. It could be just acoustics. When you're in a cave-like surrounding, maybe the sound travels. But they're in the same compartment. You understand that? Abraham's bosom is in hell. It's just not a part of hell as far as the suffering goes. But it's in the same, because why? He had to go down there and get them. He brought them out of hell, out of Abraham's bosom, a place where they are comforted. You say, how did God do that when it's 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit? I don't know how he did it, but he did it. So he says there's a great gulf down there. So there are certain impassable things that they can't do. They can't get from this to a place of comfort. They can't get out. They're trapped there. And then in Luke 16, verse 24, stay right there, it says, and he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, let me dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. There's a flame there, whether molten lava. I mean, you see flame dancing on the top of molten lava. I mean, the fact that these are souls down there, notice that they have all the extremities that the body has, because the soul is a body. When he says, I am tormented in this flame, he could be sitting in it. Not going to destroy the soul, but it doesn't mean he can't feel pain. He said, I am tormented in this flame. We mentioned about the smoke. There arose a smoke out of the pit, the smoke of a great furnace. So this adds something else to it. And you don't think of it because you think all you see is this fire all around you. No, you don't see anything. You don't see anything. You're in pitch darkness with flame all around you and heat all around you. And that's not even all of it. But the thing here is you've got this pitch darkness, this molten fire, and the fact that you're moving at the same time. There's nothing more fearful than to be in pitch darkness and moving. If you don't believe that, take a trip to Man of the Caves. Take the 6-hour tour. They'll get you right in the middle of that cave, and they'll switch off the lights and let you know what perfect darkness looks like. You'll never forget it. It's so dark you can feel it. And you can't move a step. You just because it's a pathway, it winds, and you can't it's not just this big area like a gymnasium where you're just going to walk around and feel your way. Oh no, you won't move. You're trapped. You wait for them to turn back on the light. They tell you to bring a flashlight. I highly recommend it. Just in case those lights don't come back on. You want to find your way out of there. But we're going to find out is that this thing is moving while all this is taking place. Pitch darkness, molten fire, chains of darkness. We mentioned the flood. In fact, that's what it mentions. It said chains of darkness. I mean, it does. There's nothing like darkness to just pin you down. And then the fact that it's bottomless was mentioned there in Revelation 20, verse 1. So how can there be a bottomless pit? And I've explained this many times. But there is a hollow area inside the earth. The question is, how close to the core is it? This hollow place, because that matters. Do you know if you get right to the core, and I'm sure that's molten metal in the core, but if you got right to the core of the earth and you could stand there, it would be zero gravity. You would float in place. There would be nothing pulling on you. So I imagine that God's found the sweet spot that's somewhere between the crust and the core, and that spot where there's just enough gravity pulling from the core itself, because it becomes decreased as you go down into the earth. And it would still pull you to the sides. Remember it mentioned there about Lucifer, it said, thou shalt be brought down to hell to the sides of the pit. And so as the earth moves, and it's not like you're falling at 100 miles per hour. It's a slow fall. It's a tumbling. And there's less, we're on the earth and the gravity it holds us down so we don't notice it. But in the center of the earth with less gravity, you can literally be suspended, but the gravity will pull you down. You ricochet off. You know how they do on the moon where they're bouncing around? Well, believe me, the Lord's got that thing worked out to where you just tumble. But it's a slow tumble, but it's a continual tumble, and you're in complete darkness, so you don't know what you're going to hit, you don't know when you're going to hit, you don't know what you're going to, how far you're going to bounce, you don't know where you're going because you can't see anything, and then you got this intense flame and heat on you. And the whole point is God never intended for one man to be in that. So you can't say God's an awful God. He's terrible. No, he said he created that for the devil and his angels. Let's see They think they found a hollow place between 65 and 250 miles, which is, who knows? That's pretty wide. The diameter of the earth is about 8,000 miles. And I told you the core temperature is about 12,000. Now, with the earth turning, there is a centrifugal. There's a force. You know, like you've been on one of them rides, you know, it throws you up against the wall and you're just like, you can't move. I don't think it's that much, but the fact that it is turning will create some of that, especially in less gravity. Probably have a little bit more of a, and who knows, you know, Newton worked out all this. You know, everything I told you, Newton worked all that out, but Newton never been in the center of the earth. If Jonah were around, we'd probably understand a little bit better. He'd tell us exactly what it's like. Or the Lord could have told us what it was like. We have some information. We don't have everything. Let me read you this. It says, heat from deep within the earth is thought to have the asthenosphere. It's a malleable, lubricating the undersides of the earth's tectonic plates and allowing them to move. Convection currents generated within the asthenosphere push magma upward through the volcanic vents, spreading centers to create new crust. Convection currents also stress the lithosphere above, and the cracking that often results manifest as earthquakes. So all that stuff is interconnected down there. Look in Isaiah chapter 5. This is the verse that tells you that sometimes God's got to make room. Isaiah 5:14. And I'll get back to that in a second. It says, therefore, hell hath enlarged herself and opened her mouth without measure, and their glory and their multitude and their pomp, and he that rejoiceth shall descend into it. It's probably in reference to tribulation. Isaiah 14:9, turn there. Isaiah 14:9. It says, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. That's interesting. It stirreth up the dead for thee. You got something coming out. Remember, this is the same pit that opens up and a bunch of freaky locusts come out of the thing. And he says he stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. I don't know. You'd have to raise up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. I don't know what to read into all that, but it's going to be a wild time. But hell can enlarge itself, which makes me think every time I hear about a volcano going off, I think, well, hell just got a little bigger. In other words, if you don't get saved, God will make room for you. I also thought of this. if there's no separation between the pit and hell itself, if they're the same, it's just different descriptions of it, that means when Satan is bound for 1,000 years and hell is just full of people with weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth, and he's bound, he's in there with them. I mean, he's got to listen to the screaming and the hollering. Now, maybe that'll bring him some joy. I don't know. But it's just interesting to me that he's in there with them, and he's in there with them, and they're in there. How did I want to put that? Yeah, that. They're both in there together. Because at the end, it says, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. So whoever's in hell winds up in the lake of fire. Well, the devil, he winds up in the lake of fire because he was in hell. They all get cast in there. Let's see. All right, let's talk about the lake of fire then. Revelation 21:8 says it's a lake which burneth with fire and brimstone. Brimstone is sulfur. Matthew 25:41 says it's prepared for the devil and his angels. So the final lake of fire, and even the present hell, I think, they were prepared for the devil and his angels. They were never prepared for man. Turn to Ezekiel chapter 20. So how does the lake of fire come about? Where is it? How does it happen? Well, Ezekiel chapter 20 gives us an idea of what takes place here. Verse 46 to 49, it says, Son of man, set thy face toward the south, and drop thy word toward the south, and prophesy against the forest of the south field. And say to the forest of the south, Hear the word of the Lord, thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I will kindle a fire in thee, and it shall devour every green tree in thee, and every dry tree. The flaming flame shall not be quenched, and all faces from the south to the north shall be burned therein, and all flesh shall see that I, the Lord, have kindled it, and it shall not be quenched. In other words, when he starts it, it ain't ever going out. Then said I, Ah, Lord God, they say of me, doth he not speak parables? So, I'll mention something about that here. Let's see, where have I got that at? Okay, I'm getting to it here. So who kindles this fire? The Lord does. And where he kindles it is called the south field. And Numbers chapter 34, verse 2 and 3, gives you the borders of Israel, and it gives you their southern border. And it says, Command the children of Israel, this is Numbers 34, verse 2, Command the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall unto you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan with the coast thereof. Then your south quarter shall be from the wilderness of Zin, along by the coast of Edom, and your south border shall be to the outmost coast of the sea, of the salt sea, eastward. Important thing there is you're talking about the southern part of the salt sea. And he says about that south field, that south country, that he's going to kindle a fire in it. He said it won't be extinguished. It will never be quenched. What's interesting is, anybody got a Schofield Bible? You got a Schofield? Turn to Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 45 and 46. This is what I just read about the south field. And see if the heading to that doesn't say it's a parable. Verse 45 and 46. The whole, it should be just one section there where he's got a heading. Yeah. Do you know that the disciples accused Jesus Christ of speaking in parables when he was speaking literally? And then speaking literally, they thought he was speaking in parables. Did I get that wrong again? I'm terrible today. Getting things all. When they thought he was speaking Well, when he was speaking literally, they thought he was speaking in parables. And when he was speaking in parables, they thought he was speaking literally. They get it just reversed several times. And if you want to example that, look at Matthew 15. And it's interesting there, Schofield just got it wrong because it's not a parable. It's not the parable of the south field. He sets it on fire. But they accuse Ezekiel of, he speaketh in parables. Look at verse 10 to 18. We don't want to read all that. If I can find Ezekiel 15, it's in here. I went the wrong way. What did I say? Matthew 15. What did I say? Yeah, Matthew 15. Sorry about that. He's talking about what defiles a man, and he's talking about your elimination system, and he goes on to talk about that which truly defiles a man. And look at verse well, where is it? 15? Yeah. Then answered Peter and said unto him, declare unto us this parable. And Jesus said, are ye also yet without understanding? Do you not yet understand that whatsoever entereth in the mouth goeth into the belly, it is cast out into the draught? He's talking about your elimination system. He says, but that's not what defiles you. Not what you eat defiles you. It's what comes out of your heart that defiles you in the sight of God. That's what he's telling him. He said, declare unto us the parable. Same thing happened in, I want to say Matthew 6, but it ain't Matthew 6. Where he says, except ye eat my flesh and drink my blood. I mean, he's not being literal because, he would have had to, let him start munching on his arm or something. He's talking about figuratively, you got to receive his body and his blood as a sacrifice for your sins. Like it's just like the Passover lamb. They ate that thing, but in symbol they received it. Well, remember that many of the disciples would no longer walk with him over that. The Bible forbids the eating of the drinking of blood. Jesus Christ would not have made that mistake of saying something like that. He was being figurative about that he was a sacrifice for sins and that they had to personally receive him. He said, the words that I speak unto you, their spirit and their life. He says, the flesh profiteth nothing. He wasn't talking about eating anything physically. John 6. I knew it was a 6. I just couldn't remember which one it was. Thank you. So what's interesting is that even the Bibles with the headings, you got to watch them. You got to watch it. I'll give you another one. In Luke 16, if you don't have even if you have a King James Bible, but if you look at the heading above it, maybe you got some World Bible. I don't know which ones do it, but a lot of them will say the parable of the rich man or the parable of Lazarus. It's not a parable. They're so determined to get rid of the doctrine of hell. All the cults are trying to get rid of it. Even the Baptists are trying to get rid of it. They're trying to put out the flame. They're trying to cool it down. Just make it separation, but it's not. It's as horrible as you can possibly imagine. And that's what you need to keep in mind when you're looking at your neighbor and your friend and your family and realize how horrible a place this is. It's an incentive is what it is. You don't want anybody to go there. Not even your worst enemy. And I can think of some people that, well, we all deserve it. But you can think of some, well, I think they should make it. Well, I mean, he did die for the sins of the whole world. That Berkowitz guy, son of Sam, got saved. I mean, he's got a great testimony from what I understand. Now, whether he's doctrinally straight, I don't know. But the guy's got a testimony of salvation. I mean, he murdered people. Serial killer. What are you going to do with that? Well, Jesus paid for his sins too. Now, I don't know if I'd invite him over for lunch or dinner. maybe I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's like, there's worse than him. I mean, pedophiles are worse than him. You don't invite them over for lunch. Especially if you got kids, you wouldn't do that. But Jesus died for their sins too, right? I mean, we don't exclude anybody, man. Talk about, not being prejudiced or racist. We don't leave out color, culture, religion. We don't leave out sinfulness. We don't leave out anybody. I mean, I would give the gospel to the worst fiend that ever walked the face of the earth. Now, the problem is if that fiend affected my life, now whether I could get past that or not. I know some people would have a problem with it. And when will this fire be kindled? Because we're going to have to get into this next week about exactly how this thing unfolds. But in Joel chapter 2, is where this fire gets kindled. It says, blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound the alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, it is nigh at hand. Now, he's not talking about Sunday. He's talking about the second advent. It says, a day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong, he's coming with his armies. There hath not been ever the like, neither shall there be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, that says early and latter rains. And behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. So when the Lord comes back, I think verse 11, and the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, for he is strong to execute his word, for the day of the Lord is great and very terrible, and who can abide it? Okay. Anyway, when he comes back at the Advent, he's going to take the same route that the children of Israel took back in the book of Exodus. And that brings him right up to one side of the Salt Sea, probably on the right, because you got Edom, Ammon, and Moab. Is that right? I believe it's Edom, Ammon, and Moab, or is it Edom, Moab, and Edom, Ammon, and Moab? And that's the way that thing's it's like a little hook, but begins at Sinai, doesn't touch the ground, then comes all the way up through. And when he's coming up through there, there's a flame. It says, a sword goeth out of his mouth. That sword's the word of God. And whatever he says happens. And it says, a flame devoureth before him. And when he comes up through there, he's going to set something on fire that's never going to be quenched, going to burn for 1,000 years. And we'll look at that next week. And if you've never heard this study before, you're going to be kind of surprised at what's down there in the south about that Dead Sea. So we'll pick that up next week. Does anybody have a question about what we covered? I know y'all are looking at me like, we've heard this how many times? If you've been in this church, well, it's been 20 years now. I probably taught it twice, maybe? Probably twice.